everybody. I'll do a quick brief introduction of myself. My name is Anjala Krishen. I am a professor at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and also the director of the MBA programs. That's about it. I was at the conference last year, really liked Course Hero, so I'm here today to talk about lessons on flexibility in the classroom. And so with no further ado, I'm going to talk for about 20-ish minutes, and then I'm hoping to entertain any questions at all that you have. So let's just start by kind of talking about a trifecta that I feel very connected with and that I've kind of applied to lots of different areas in my research. They are creativity, motivation, and opposition. And so we're going to sort of talk about this trifecta and how I believe that even in teaching in the global pandemic, it's very relevant and fits. So we'll talk about kind of what these are and then sort of how they can work together to help you, I believe. So I just want to start by talking about creativity of the three. So the first thing with creativity is that, and these are 2013 statistics, I apologize for that. However, they still do apply. And so in a study of about 4,000 adults, half of which were educators, researchers confirmed that the education system often deters, stifles, or decreases student creativity, okay? And this is, again, a topic that I have been interested in. And so we further delved into this study, and what it essentially says is that many of the reasons that are cited are that we don't integrate creativity in the classroom, that it's not prioritized. And many of the people who participated in this survey also said it's the role of other educators. And on the other hand, 86% of them indicate that creativity in education will fuel the economies of the future. So we kind of all know at some level that creativity is important. To go on, the same study also, another study of 5,000 adults that is cross-cultural argued that 1 in 4 people feel that they're not living up to their creative potential. Only 1 in 4 feel that they are, sorry. And there's universal concern that the education system is stifling. We kind of knew this from the previous study. There's a workplace creativity gap where people feel pressure to be productive instead of creative. And then everyone feels that unlocking creative potential is seen as the key to economic and social growth, societal growth. So these are this is laying out the foundation of creativity. Let's move on to motivation. And there's a reason that I'm sort of going to bring these three in. Creativity and motivation are inextricably tied together. I'm actually working on a piece right now on their tie. It's not published yet. But one prominent contextual factor for enhancing or inhibiting creativity is leadership. Specifically, transformational leadership enables cognitive diversity in teams, which ultimately increases intrinsic motivation. I did give you a site. I'm happy to give you that information or those papers later. But essentially, again, repeating that, we know that in order to enable intrinsic motivation in teams and cognitive diversity, you have to have those two letters, transformational leadership. So as professors, as educators, as students, all of you that are on this call right now, all of you are playing a part in this, whether you are the student that is part of that unit that is working in a team, or whether you're the professor who is the transformational leader. We also know that motivation in the classroom is contagious, from instructor to student, from student to student. I titled my paper, Catch It If You Can, Contagious Motivation in the Classroom. So that's essentially another piece. So the third piece of this trifecta, we move on. So this third piece is what I'm calling opposition. And I'm calling it opposition from basically being in the box, thinking of being trapped in doing the same thing over and over again, in not thinking outside of that sort of metaphorical box. And I'm also thinking of it in terms of how we frame things. So very often we frame things as in terms of, for example, success and failure. We have this sort of learned behavior of dichotomizing things. And so we say, oh, I succeeded, yay for me. That's what we tell people. We tend to hide our failures. And what I ask in this slide, or what I think about here, or what I want to bring up is the idea of framing the success as trying. So I tried, I succeeded, and framing that whatever we think of as failure as sort of the not trying. And in doing so, what we're essentially doing is we're changing the game from failure and success and failure to trying and not trying. And if we think about it that way, not only do we change the way we educate, the way we send messages to our students, but we also change the way we internalize success and failure. And so I like using this way of thinking kind of, and I'm an ultra runner, and I think of it even in terms of whatever I finish, and that makes me happy. It's not really about I need to do X and therefore I'm a success, and if I don't do it, I'm a failure. It's I finished this and I'm happy about this because guess what? I tried. So that's kind of the third piece of the trifecta. So what is in the middle of that? And I'm going to sneak back for just a second to kind of, in case people just joined, I'm talking about these three pieces: creativity, motivation, and opposition. And I'm saying that in the middle of them, at their overlap, is what I'm going to call decontextualizing. And I have done a talk that sort of talks about some of this in a UNLV Creates forum, and I'm sort of applying my ideas in that talk and some of my research to the context of teaching. And so what is decontextualizing? Well, first of all, thinking context itself is just the circumstances that form the setting, right, for an event. So I can't think of I don't know if the word is better, but more appropriate time to think about decontextualizing than where we are right here, right now. I literally cannot think of a more appropriate time to think about that, because we didn't expect this to happen. We did not see this coming. Many of us, and myself included, am teaching for the very first time right now a fully online class. It's my very first experience. I've been immersed. I just jumped headfirst into the ocean. So that is decontextualizing. I'm changing the place that I am normally in. I'm normally in front of a classroom. I'm normally able to convey things in very different in a very different context. So my place has changed, my teaching from home. My social surroundings have changed. I've got a dog. In fact, I sent my dog to my daughter's house right now so that I could not worry about him potentially barking. And so who do I trust with my success and who do I trust with my failure? How do I sort of come to terms with the fact that here I am in a position of influence in a situation that I didn't expect to happen? And yet I need to live through it and I need to keep going. So I'm saying that at some level, this trifecta absolutely applies to me as well as an instructor. In the same research that I've been looking at, I've also looked at in terms of creativity. So we're kind of delving back into now some pedagogical research. The highest level of creativity that students experience is from the intersection of active learning and social learning. So when we look at this bottom right corner, the things that they feel are most creative that they do in the classroom are going to be things where they're not only feeling that they're active, but they're also feeling that they're social. And so that is therein lies the challenge. How do we activate those two things at one time in environments that very often do not feel social and do not potentially feel active? And that's where the title of my talk comes in: Going with the Flow, Lessons in Flexibility. And so one of the things that I want to keep talking about and thinking about and asking you questions about as we go through this talk are, who are you? Who are you now? But also, who are you in the classroom, and why and how should those be two different things? Why should those be two different identities? And so something that I've been doing and that I've done for years now in the classroom is to think about, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be having a conversation, a two-way exchange of learning. And so I'm going to go through some of these suggestions, and then I'm going to kind of go off on my own a little. And let me just bring that in as well. Right here, right now, as I'm doing this talk, I don't need to be stuck to these slides. I don't have to. There's nothing forcing me to be wedded to these slides. And something that I always tell my students is, you know, I'm not going to be held hostage by my own thoughts that happened in a linear fashion. Maybe I have an example or an idea, and maybe I need to do what I often call a field trip. Maybe I need to do an online field trip right now. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get out of my slides. I'm going to get onto Google, and I'm going to Google something to talk them through another idea. Maybe, you know, get out of this exact form and mode of learning. Why? Because in that moment that I'm doing that, they might switch gears as well. They might turn to more active learning. They might have to get out of paper and pen. They might have to think through things in a different way. And so what I'm getting at is, by changing not only who we are often in different mediums, but also what we're teaching, that's not going to satisfy anyone, right? That's not going to be going with the flow. So let me just kind of go through this list and then sort of open the door up, because I think there's probably potentially some questions that people want to ask. And I love having two-way exchanges. So change your learning style into conversation and two-way learning. So, or sorry, lecturing style. So that's kind of one of my first suggestions. And I'm going to kind of briefly go through these with you. And so how can we do this? And it's very hard again in the online environment, but not impossible. So what I often like to say is infuse questions and open-ended conversation starters. And I want to also mention that in doing so, we don't again have to be wedded to technology in exactly how it was meant to be used. We can be creative in the way we utilize tools. Behind me, you see a whiteboard. I like to put this here because, first of all, it makes me feel like I'm in an active learning environment in a classroom. So if nothing else, the students kind of get the impression that, wow, she's serious right now. Often I'll be teaching something and I'll stand up right here and I'll start writing on the board. And I joke around with my students that if I'm writing, you're writing. So if you can't see what I'm doing, then you're not asking me what I'm doing, right? So if I make a box and I put a word into it and I tell you the word, that's good enough because you know how to make the box and make the word on your paper, right? So the way I explain it to them is all I'm doing is just what you're supposed to be doing, and I'm vocalizing it for you. So again, I'm forcing them into that active learning mode by sort of telling them, I'm going to be who I am. This is my learning environment. I'm going, or my teaching environment, and I'm going with the flow here. Second bullet, I like doing quick think assignments. And again, these are things that I do in a normal face-to-face environment. So I will absolutely continue to do them when I'm online. Do I use polls? Do I do some of the things, use some of the tools that potentially WebEx gives me? Sure, but I'm not wedded to it. If I want to be creative, if I want to do a quick Qualtrics survey and have students fill it out during class, no problem. I do that. So I do things that I may be familiar with, certain tools, and I'm going to use those tools so that to the extent possible, I'm not having to reinvent every single thing on the fly. I've often had students create the assignment in their own words and then use a voting system to select one of them. And this is a very small number of points potentially, but again, it's forcing them to be creative. One of my titles of my papers is called Teaching Outside the Rubric. And I've had students say, what is creativity? I don't understand. What do you mean by creativity? Creativity is giving me everything I asked for and then something that I didn't ask for. That's creativity. Creativity is not following exactly what I told you to do and nothing else. So I always tell them, you can make a 90, potentially, if you're perfect on everything and do exactly what I tell you to do. But that last 10 points is on you. You need to give me something I didn't ask for. And I do that for every single assignment. Sorry, I should say project, not necessarily an exam, obviously. But create a legacy through projects that provide an opportunity to enhance the community. So I do this every single class. I have students actually work on real life projects. Keep allowing students to define creativity. This is kind of a sneaky one, but it's kind of fun. If I ask them what creativity is, then I'm sort of holding them responsible for enacting it, right? And I always say, enact what you expect. I'll repeat that, enact what you expect. If I expect them to be creative, then I sure as heck better be creative. And so in order to do that, I have to keep on trying things. And I also have to tell students, listen, I'm gonna try new stuff and I may mess up. That brings me to my next thought. Mistakes happen. They're gonna happen. They're gonna happen today, they're gonna happen tomorrow, they're gonna happen in class, they're gonna happen outside of class. So I've told students over and over that like them, I can learn. I'm willing to learn, and it's what makes me who I am, and it's what makes me my brand. And so thinking about those mistakes and dwelling on them, that doesn't accomplish anything, but admitting to them and being kind of funny and laughing at yourself a little bit, it's very helpful, and it's helped me a lot in the classroom. And so there's kind of that laugh at yourself thing. Of course, I've already said this over and over, but be creative. There's no reason why you can't apply your former ideas. Good example is this whiteboard. I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody thought I was crazy when I said I want a whiteboard. I want a rolling whiteboard to work at in my house. And they said, but you can get that tool. You can plug in a Wacom and you can write on it. That's fine. I can do that too. But I want a whiteboard. This is who I am. This gives me my context. This makes me feel like I'm teaching. And if nothing else, it brings me happiness and makes me feel more positive about my teaching experience. So I wanted to show it to you so that you know that I'm not making it up. This is how I've been teaching. I have class 5 to 7, 4 days a week right now, and I'm doing synchronous classes every 3 days. And so that's kind of the be creative thing. And I gave you the whiteboard as an example. And then I said, stay positive and go with the flow. And so part of the reason that I said go with the flow, and I didn't introduce myself too much, but I will say this, I do a lot of research on pedagogy, but I also do research on decision-making and consumer behavior. and I'm specifically a marketing professor. So a lot of our research looks at source and message effects. So we might be looking at, oh, there's this message, there's something you have to convey. But there's also who you are that's coming out in this message, right? We know it's called the elaboration likelihood model. Well, obviously who I am needs to come out. Otherwise, why are people interested in taking my class? So something that I always tell my students is sorry, not sorry. I mean, I am who I am, and we're going to have an exchange of value, and you're going to enjoy this class, but I'm not going to change who I am, and I don't want you to change who you are. I want us to learn from each other. And so one of the things I say about go with the flow, and the reason I bring that up, and I always think about this, and I owe credit to a person that I taught a class overseas twice in London for in conjunction with UNR, University of Nevada, Reno. So hi to my UNR people. And during the class, one fine day, I'm in London trying to teach, and and I didn't have. I think I went to make copies, and the place that I was supposed to make copies of the exam was down. It was out. It was their machine had broken, and I was kind of standing there clueless. And and at that point I can panic. I can, there's any number of ways I can feel. But I just went with the flow. I figured out another alternative solution as fast as I could. I made it work. I stayed as positive as I could, and I was honest. Hey, this is what happened. These are things I can't control, but I can control my attitude. I can control my positivity, and I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to get angry. Why would I lash out at people that don't have control? And so even as faculty, we often have people that we're depending on, and being as positive and going with the flow with those people is only going to help the system. Because at the end of the day, this is a supply chain. We're teaching people, but people are helping us as well. So that supply chain is a lot more fun and a lot more positive if we go with the flow. So those are kind of the main points I wanted to make. I also wanted to mention that I'm trying to be creative in terms of, I just got an article in Forbes, and I have some little shout outs to some of my research here, but I'm going to open the floor up, and I would love to see if there are questions. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here.
Certainly, and I'm happy to help Angela if you'd like me to read out some questions.
That would be great. That would be awesome.
Awesome. So we have a few here. Thanks everyone for putting comments in the chat. So I think one of our first questions here is, thinking about this from the student perspective, and I actually have my own little aside to add to that question.
Oh.
So Gloria says, I think I'm less concerned about who I am and more concerned about who the students are, and how to get them to share the changes they're undergoing in an artificial environment like Zoom. So do you have any suggestions there, Anjala?
Okay, yeah, sure. I think that's great. I love that. Okay, so I have two comments about that I think, one, I definitely don't, I absolutely 100% agree with you that very often students, they do want to share, and I'm finding two things with that. The trust is two ways. So in other words, my experience with this has been, and I've been teaching since it's 2007. So I'm not a 30-year person here. So I certainly can learn from you all. But my experience has been that they want me to be as open with them as they want to be with me. And so I, by example, am as open and honest and forthcoming with my background and my shortcomings. And then what I notice is that they then reciprocate that. And just practical thing that I did, I have these cards that I have students do every semester. I've been collecting them since 2007. It's an index card. I'm happy to share you the information, but it's an index card, and I just have them fill out the front. And then on the back of it, I have them do this thing called a self-ad. So it's an advertisement about yourself. And since I teach marketing and advertising, it kind of fits. And so they can do whatever they want. I ask them to, it needs to be appropriate, right? And it should be able to be shared with the entire class. Well, of course, COVID hit. We're all sitting here like, well, how am I going to do my physical card? These things help me learn the names of my students, which is very important to me, that engagement. I turned it into an online thing. I made a simple Word doc that was 4x6. I shared it to all the students, and I asked them to decorate it, turn it into a PDF, and upload it. And then I took a PDF combiner and combined them all into one document, and then uploaded it for the class. So that way the entire class could learn about each other, quick and dirty. They did a great job. I was kind of shocked. It's the first time I've ever gone online with my postcard idea. But here's the thing. This does go back to what I said. I didn't change who I am and what I do. I just changed the way I go about getting the exact same thing. So
that's exactly right. And actually we have Another question from Gloria and a couple from Armand here asking about assessments. So Armand wonders how do alternative summative assessments with no exams fit into your model, if that makes sense. And also, I guess we could interpret this question here as, would discussion forums count as a way of assessing the amount of learning that's happening?
Wow, that's great. I'm still doing projects. I still have projects. I have breakout sessions with teams. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up synchronous sessions where I have teams meet with me 15 minutes at a time. And actually to keep I'm giving you all this little dirty secrets, but to keep it easier for me, I have 9 teams, for example, right now. I just give them 20 minutes each, and I just open up my my office, sort of my WebEx office, and I give them timelines. And if people join during other people's teams, that's fine, because again, we're just building community, the classroom. So I've been using the tools to kind of have these little sessions, but I'm not sure if I answered the question. So with the assessments, the alternate assessments, I think you do want to still, I'm going to learn from this Flipgrid thing. That sounds cool. You all are going to know a lot more technology than I am, I guarantee it. But I think with the alternate assessments, I would still want to do projects. I would not cut projects out. The discussions, that's a really good question. I think I would love to hear what other people think of that. That's a hard one for me because I'm not sure discussion forums can measure student learning. Yeah, I think so. I agree. And the fact that we're doing this online does not stop us from potentially videos. I'm having my students actually do presentations with PowerPoint slides and share their screens. And I go through a little test session before the class the day they have to present, so that they have a few minutes, join, try it on me. I make sure that it works. And then when they present, they just have to use their slides. I haven't been having students do videos because I feel like that they don't make mistakes. They don't have a chance to mess up. They don't really experience a real presentation, which we all know is totally different than a video. So I really want to force the accidents to happen. I want to force the failure. It is part of learning. So that, especially with group projects, is important.
Yeah, and those butterflies never go away. I'm sure, every time you go on that virtual stage or in-person stage, which a classroom is, it's always there. So thank you. We do have another question here, and a couple actually. One from Gloria about incorporating creativity in lower level college courses. And then Kim is asking, as a freshly minted PhD, most of my teaching experience has been as a high school teacher. So how do I market myself and my skills in this challenging job market? I kind of see these questions going hand in hand, as when you do start at the college level, you want to market yourself with some creative approaches to especially beginner classes. So if you have anything there for us, Anjala, we'd love to hear.
Wow. So now this is just like life and times. Wow. I like the question because, I've been around a while and I had a previous career, and we did a lot of I've interviewed people and I was a manager. So I like the question because it's really smart. And I would say, and I forget the name of the person who asked the question. Who was it again?
Kim.
Alex, thank you. So Kim, so what I would say is, and again, this is just me, but is be a trifecta: service, teaching, research. I would really try hard not to box yourself into one or the other. What you'll find is that, at least my experience has been, again, both on the market and in my career, in the classroom, you do your best. You're a mentor. You are bringing everything you have into the classroom, that creativity, that motivation. In terms of research, if at all possible, even depending on your background and what it is you like to research, try to keep your hand in that pot as well, because again, that is knowledge creation, right? So there's that benefit when you're doing research, and you can do lit reviews, you can do pedagogical research, whatever it is that perhaps you enjoy that you did during your dissertation. And then in terms of service, I've never seen a journal that isn't happy as can be to get people who will do reviews. And so I've had people, because now I'm an editor of a journal, and I've had people reach out and say, hey, I'm a freshly minted PhD. I'd really like to do reviews. And I'm like, oh yes, please do. So, and we're always happy to send reviews. So I think doing that kind of stuff, it builds camaraderie. I always also say your net worth is your network. And you cannot build a network without putting in time across the board. You have to put in the service, you have to put in the teaching and the research, not one or the other. So that's just kind of, those are some ideas that I had. But I've always found, I'm doing this is really a teaching talk, but I'm quite an active researcher. Now I'm an administrator. I don't want to take out those aspects of my career. Those are things that I've enjoyed. So we don't have to do one thing. We can do multiple things and balance them.
Just like with slides and Googling, yeah. Everything's
Yes,
full
yes,
circle, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
We do have about 5 minutes left here, and I have a question from Jane Dean, and it's a very timely one, considering what we're headed for in the fall. The question is, I may be teaching some students face-to-face and others online at the same time. Ideas, question mark.
Oh, wow, what a good one. Yeah. We're having the same thing. We're also switching. I just switched the MBA program to a hybrid mode. By the way, I love this conversation on the chat, which is showing me that we are such a community. And I love it because that's what my students do as well when I'm teaching. And I think this is good. This is building community. But I think when we're doing face-to-face with online, my just quick advice is make sure you address those online students. They could potentially feel left out. They're missing out on this kind of connection you're doing with those ones that are face-to-face. And a trick that I'm kind of learning is I will randomly throw in people's names as I'm giving examples. So the other day I was having to teach, because I'm teaching consumer behavior right now, and I was having to teach about conditioning and in psychology and how, and then kind of the evolution of cognitive psychology from behavioral. And I just started using names. I said, oh, Blake, you love Porsches. Just imagine that you're driving a Porsche down the road. So whenever possible, if you can kind of know some of the names maybe of the people that are out there in cyberspace and bring them into the conversation, or what do you think about this so-and-so, or, just as much as possible, because we're trying to build a community. This is what I tell my students. You will never be the same after this class. You will have forever changed. If things go well, you will be different. You will always have a few things that I taught you, I hope, and that you learned from your peers, or maybe connections that you made, or maybe a job that you got, or whatever that is there forever. Like, this is an intervention that will, and so make it worth it. Make those connections now. And so I joke around too, because the students go, well, you're having 8 synchronous sessions. Do I have to attend? And I said, I don't know. Last I checked, you're paying me right now. So, last I checked, you should want to attend. It's kind of like you got a doctor's appointment and you're missing, you're not going to go so it's like, I'm pretty sure you're going to want to attend. But we're not in first grade. So if you're going to miss it, it's probably going to be, you're going to regret it. That's kind of how I try to do it. So
yeah, that's the challenge there. I'm seeing some agreement in the chat as well. We have a couple more minutes. I would love to encourage people to share your thoughts in the chat. This time flew by. It felt like 1 second and 1.5 seconds, right?
I think I can talk. It's been nice to e-meet all of you. You feel free to reach out anytime. You've got my name. It's very easy to find me. And I do miss the conference. I did go last year. It was a lot of fun to actually physically meet people and hang out and stuff. So, and it's I realize this is a really cool community. Thank you. But I was going to say, if there's things that, yeah, I like this. I like to begin class with, I'm in the presence of greatness. I hope to help bring that out in you during the next set of weeks. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. I always say, I start out class and I say, this is going to be an exchange of value. I'm going to learn from you. You're going to learn from me. So.
And I've just shared Anjala's profile on Course Hero. You can go ahead and check her out. There's a bio. There's some of the resources that Anjala has uploaded. That's how you guys can connect. And people are sharing other resources in the chat. This is so amazing. We'll save the chat and the slides as well. Angela, we talked about some corrections. And so we'll follow up with everyone after the conference with an update about the slides. And then we have a thank you so much from the UK. What a beautiful way to wrap.
Awesome. I like that I'm talking to the UK. Oh, wow. I like that. That's great. I love that we have a cross-cultural international group. This is wonderful. So I appreciate everybody. This has been a lot of fun. I don't know how much I hope you got something out of it, but I just immediately when they asked me, I thought, well, if we're telling them to be creative, we might as well be creative. So that's kind of the big message. That's about it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It was so nice to meet you. Take care.
And yes, Monica, we will be distributing recordings afterwards for those who couldn't attend. though, that is forthcoming. We will probably be following up in a couple of weeks. Hopefully that's fine. And you'll get an email.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Alex. Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Bye-bye.